So I was talking about how the right is rising in Europe right now. The left is rising in Europe as well. And that's the other half of the story that I find so fascinating. We're seeing the same kind of polarities, frankly, that we saw around the world in the early 1930s, where people are saying, basically, you know, this kind of corporate middle, it doesn't work. You either have a social welfare state, like Franklin Roosevelt put together here in the United States, you know, like the most European countries put together in Europe after World War II. You either have a social welfare state, or you have a quasi-libertarian state where, you know, pretty much everybody's on their own. And we're in that latter category compared to most of Europe, but you just don't do this kind of thing in the middle where you give people benefits and then you take them away and then you give it to them and then you take it away and you just keep doing that back and all the time that you're pumping all the money you can up to the top, up to the very wealthy. So this from Deutsche Welle. This was posted by Mo Kao Hu Hao III over at Democratic Underground. The left wing, but it's from Deutsche Welle, which is the German state radio. It's the German NPR. The left-wing alliance has rejected the program proposed by Portugal Prime Minister Coelho, forcing the government to resign after only 11 days in power. Now, keep in mind, Coelho was a leftist. The opposition plans to reverse pay and pension cuts. Portugal's Socialist Party has forged an unprecedented pact with Portugal's Communist Party and the radical left bloc, BLOC, which is like Occupy, to take down the... Oh, I'm sorry. I said Coelho was a leftist. He's a center-right. I was wrong. To take down the center-right government of Minister Pedro Passos Coelho in a parliamentary vote today, on Tuesday. The no-confidence motion drafted by the Socialists garnered 123 of 230 votes. Now, this is... In addition to being at 11 days, the most short-lived government in the history of Portugal, what I'm pointing out is that polarization is getting more and more intense. Now, why is polarization getting more intense? Because the vast majority of the voters in the United States and Europe are getting squeezed. And who are they getting squeezed by? They're getting squeezed largely by transnational corporations and very wealthy people. But it looks to them like they're being squeezed in the United States. It looks to working class white people like, oh, it's Mexicans coming from Mexico taking my job. You know, forget the fact that, you know, most working class white people in the United States would not go out and pick tomatoes for 20 cents or 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour, you know, or, you know, by the lug or by the bag or whatever it works out to something in that. They wouldn't do it. Even $7 an hour, they wouldn't do it. This is hard, backbreaking, brutal work. At least they wouldn't do it for that pay. When John McCain offered $50 an hour for picking lettuce in the fields of Arizona, he got over 10,000 responses. So your middle voters, your by and large white middle class or white working class voters in the United States are being told by the political chattering class and by both parties, frankly, but particularly by the Republican Party. Actually, it's not both parties. This is largely the Republican Party. That those people who have a little bit darker skin than you do, they're the ones who are coming into this country to take your job. And the people with much darker skin than you have, they're the ones who not only want to take your job, they want to rape your wife. Right? I mean, these tired, old, and obscene racist stereotypes not only are alive and well in the United States, they are growing. Now, same thing is happening in Europe. Only in Europe, it's not Mexicans, it's Syrians and Iraqis. And we can sit around and say, well, you know, if George W. Bush had not invaded Iraq, had not lied, George Bush and Tony Blair, both of them knowing that they were lying, we now know. If they had not lied us into an unnecessary war that cost us trillions of dollars and millions of lives and has created ISIL and an entire, I mean, you know, just totally ruined the Middle East, Europe would not be having a refugee problem. But it goes way beyond that. It goes to how this thing is being sold. And Angela Merkel thought she could be the nice, kind of American liberal, big-hearted, oh, yeah, we're going to welcome these people in. No, they're not going to be welcome. It's the Europeans in America, the European Americans, people of my race, European ancestry Americans who are the most xenophobic and vitriolic in their racism in the United States. And it's not that different in Europe. In fact, the so-called right-wing parties in Europe are all basically anti-immigration parties. Marie Le Pen looks like she could take a third of the vote in France next year. Marie Le Pen, whose father, who started the National Front, which is like this. I mean, they're to the right of the Tea Party, right? They're not quite the Nazi Party, but they're moving in that direction. The National Front in France. She's now walking back from a lot of his, even I think for a while there he was even denying the Holocaust happened, or variations thereof. His daughter, who is now a serious candidate for president of France, is walking back some of the more extreme positions, but is doubling down on the anti-immigrant stuff and on the let's get out of the Eurozone stuff. We'll still be part of the European, but actually they don't even want to be part of the European Union. She's saying right now, if you're a European country, you have to let anybody from any other European country come into your country and work, which is driving down wages in the rich countries of Europe. And it's driving immigration out of the poorer countries of Europe, which is not only a muscle drain, but a brain drain. In other words, this is a policy that's not working well for Europe. And the right-wingers have their thumb on this, their finger on the pulse of this, and people are very upset about it. But at the core of it are two issues, two very, very fundamental issues: economics and racism. And when those two things collide, it is extremely toxic. It's like mixing saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
You mix saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal together, grind it up, and you got gunpowder. We'll be back. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.